Assassin's Creed continues its juggernaut journey across the video game landscape with this Mark of the Ninja inspired 2D stealth side-scroller. Assassin's Creed Chronicles China is the first in 3 separate titles, with another 2, Russia and India, planned for later release. In this China episode though, you play as Shao Jun, the Chinese assassin who's made a few appearances in the Assassin's Creed comics and the short film Embers. She's intent on revenge, and as you progress the game fills out her backstory and why her hatred for the Templars runs so deep. So far, so Assassin's Creed. There's really nothing new here in terms of the story, but the change in location to Asia gives the franchise a fresh feel, and June herself is animated beautifully. Chronicles eschews the 3D expansive world of Unity and instead goes for a 2.5D style very similar to Mark of the Ninja, whereas with the obvious inspiration here. Hitting you in the face like a hidden blade then is how much stealth and not combat play a part in this game, far more so than the recent Asia releases. Manipulation of your enemies with firecrackers, whistles and the environmental distractions is key to completing this game and avoiding direct combat. Though, a few skirmishes are always going to be inevitable. As with Mark of the Ninja, vision cones and audible detection cues are visible on screen, so it's easy to see where to go and how to avoid detection straight away. Each level is essentially divided up into puzzle rooms, followed by a checkpoint. Each checkpoint sees you given a grade depending on your playstyle: Shadow, Assassin and Brawler, all of which are pretty self-explanatory, though more points are given for taking the quiet approach. Stray into a guard's field of vision and they'll investigate. Dally too long and every guard on the screen will be alerted to your presence. Once that happens, out come the throwing stars and you'll have to escape quickly to avoid death and shoved back to the last checkpoint. Being spotted isn't world-ending though, as guards can't jump from level to level. Crossbowmen have the ability to shoot long distances, but just dropping down or scooting up a level and waiting for the timer to run down works pretty well. Sync points, animus shards and chests all add to the completionist obsessive compulsive checklist, and as you progress, health upgrades, new weapons and skills are unlocked, not to mention the typical character, place and backstory data. Amongst the levels are hiding places, allowing you to sneak around enemies and kill them if desired. They're also good for hiding corpses. Later on, these shadowy holes become bamboo screens or bushes which require you to remain still to avoid detection if a guard comes close or looks your way. Now, it wouldn't be Assassin's Creed without the old hiding in plain sight in a crowd trick, and Chronicles China does the same, making gatherings of civilians for you to hide in later levels. Groups will move around, allowing you to sneak past some areas and avoid combat altogether, which is always the optimum approach. You have a few skills and items to use: throwing knives, daze guards and cut ropes to unleash the deadly red-coloured crates upon your enemies. Firecrackers make noise and daze enemies, while the noise darts allow you to create a distraction on the other side of the level. Finally, you can whistle to draw hapless goons to your position, either to sneak past them or, in my favourite playstyle, pick them off one by one until a huge mound of bodies lies on the floor. At the end of some levels you'll have a target to eliminate. This is Assassin's Creed after all. And I was hoping for some sort of boss fight, or at least an environment where you can choose how you go about assassinating your mark. Mostly though, it's a case of just sneaking up behind the guy as he looks into the middle distance and icing him, admittedly with a pretty awesome cool animation. That animation style makes the occasional swordplay look really sweet, and I don't know if I've played a game with a more satisfying block than Chronicles. It's a bizarre thing to mention, but Jun's moves are exquisite and they're a joy to watch. As the game progresses and new meaner guards are introduced alongside barred hiding places that require time spent out in the open to unlock and use, Chronicles China opens up just a little. Only in the final few levels could I blaze through, combining quick attacks like the slide and leap kill move, and then quickly hiding before resuming a different style of play. These Twilight stages are Chronicles at its best. You've picked up the skills, have enemies that can devastate you if you get too close or clumsy, but you're able to dispatch them with ease if you get your timing and planning right. Helping you along the way if you're struggling is the Helix power. This power-up is filled by collecting blue animus fragments, and once activated, allows you a short period of time where you can move from cover to cover without being detected, no matter where the guards are looking. It's kind of a cheat mode, but it works pretty well when the guards are packed in like sardines and your brain gets a little bit fried by trying to figure out the solution. Another cool moment in Chronicles China was seeing the entire perspective of the level rotate from one side of the building to another. It gave the levels a bit more substance and depth than the 2D perspective usually allows, especially when some levels allow you to move between the foreground and the background. I'm really hoping they bring this back a little bit more for the other episodes. Those cool effects though aren't going to paper over any gameplay shortcomings, and Chronicles doesn't escape without a few issues. This is a pretty simple game to grasp, and although the difficulty sent me gnashing at times, it never really got so difficult that it challenged me in a particular way. For all the cool 3D effects to make Chronicles seem like a world with a lot of visual depth, it did actually lack enough variety to match those elements. The levels rarely felt different enough to keep my interest going, and if you're hoping for any kind of Metroidvania trappings, like going back to a previous level and unlocking certain areas, Chronicles is going to disappoint in that area. Sure, there's animus fragments hidden away in places that you can go back to and find, but nothing in the actual discovery of them makes it really feel worthwhile unless you're a real junkie for that kind of thing. There's always the pursuit of a perfect shadow run or trying to gold each level by being a brawler, but honestly there's not much satisfaction to be had in replaying the levels in different styles, until the later ones come along, as the level design isn't quite expansive enough to warrant going back. Technically, I came across a few issues with the game engine freezing at certain points, sometimes at checkpoints and other times when I was in the middle of a move. This issue has got worse the more I've played, and maybe it's a review code issue. Hopefully it'll be patched on release. Chronicles is playable with the keyboard, but unless you want to give yourself a busted blood vessel, I'd recommend going with a controller. Assassin's Creed Chronicles China is a good game. It's just a shame that the art style is just a little muted. It's a really cool design with the watercolours kind of going off in the background and in the foreground, especially when you have the fire levels. But many of the locations feel just too similar to be distinct enough to really kind of remember. I really like the style, I just wish it was just a bit more vibrant. And here's where my Assassin's Creed DNA comes in. I loved the Ezio Auditore Creed games, and since then the bloated tentpole releases have held little interest really. But here, it's a simple tale set in China. I was much more willing to play and invest in Jun's struggle. Assassin's Creed Chronicles China might be a little tame in places and lack enough variety to keep you interested for long, but it does have a charm I feel the other Assassin's Creed games now lack. If the other two Chronicles games coming up can build on this start, then I think that Ubisoft and Climax games could show that just as with Child of Light and Valiant Hearts, it's possible to make a smaller, superior experience. 7.5 out of 10.